70% of a winning offer happens before you ever write a word. So there are some rules. Number one, write to only one person in their language, in their vocabulary, right? Their dreams, their fears, their vocabulary, who are their enemies, what are their suspicions, what are their feelings. This is back to some of that Blair Warren stuff, right? We can't write to those things if we don't know what they are. So you're going to have to read a lot. You know, one of the things that I do to get to the emotional element of what's happening is this search I do called a so bad search. So if you're selling something that has to do with pain, so let's say I was selling something that had to do with headaches, right? I would Google headaches so bad at Google and do a search for forums only. There's a format that says forums, quotation marks, headaches so bad. And you'll have somebody on a forum telling a story about how awful their headaches are in a way that you couldn't even imagine, right? Read as many of those as you can, and you'll start to understand the pain and the agony, or I want blank so bad, depending on what they want, right? How bad do they want it? What are the struggles that they're going through to get it? We need to know their dreams and their fears. That's how we get it. Then we need to find their vocabulary. I'll show you some ways to come up with a lot of vocabulary. This is a biggie. We need to figure out who their enemies are. We need to find out what their suspicions are and what they're feeling. Happy, sad, betrayal, depression, pain, wanting, desire. Are they ambitious? So one of the tools I use for this is called TwinWord. There's a free version of this. You can use this. It does quite a lot. But we use the paid version. I don't know how much it is. But you can enter any word into TwinWord, and it's going to create you this map of what's called latent semantic indexing terms. And most people use this for SEO purposes because it lets Google know that you're talking about, like bookkeeping, you're going to be using terms like ledgers and QuickBooks and software and entries and debits and things like that. So you're not necessarily talking to an accountant, right? You're talking to somebody who might want to be. So maybe you don't have those same set of key terms, right? You may just be looking up entrepreneur or opportunity seeker, right? You may look at the word opportunity and see what words come up around that. But if you're talking to somebody about a specific thing, you need to talk to them in their vocabulary. They will sniff you out pretty quickly if you're pretending to be an expert in their space, but you don't speak in their language. It's one of the biggest tells. So TwinWord's a great place to do this. So like I did this one on worm farming, because that's important. And you can see all the little angles, distorted, rambling. So and then this site's called Answer the Public. This is one of the best resources in the world that not a lot of people know about. People in War Room mostly know about this because we've talked about it a lot. But it is amazing. And they have a new paid version. I'm actually glad they brought it out because the free version was a little limited. The paid one's pretty cheap and it's amazing. But what it does is you can enter any term in like worm farming and it's going to tell you the questions, the unanswered questions that are being asked about it. Can you make money worm farming? How does worm farming work? How to start a worm farm? How lucrative is worm farming, right? Is worm farming vegan? Right? Is worm farming profitable? So the point is, in SEO, by the way, a little hint, if you ever have a page about a subject and you answer all the questions, you have a post that answers each of the questions in Answer the Public, your page will almost surely rank on page 1 of Google. Almost certainly. And it expands out to worm farming for fishing, worm farming in Australia, worm farming in Ireland, worm farming for dummies, worm farming in Texas. So geographic areas, worm farming for beginners, worm farming for chicken feed, right? There's all these weird, do you think anybody really has taken the time to answer all these questions on a worm farming website? Probably not. And you can do it as an accordion. But for our purpose, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what questions are unanswered in the mind of our reader. What do they want to know, right? And you can pick out 10 or 15 or 20 of these and go after a different tool, and it'll tell you what the volume, how many people are searching for that. But what's really cool about Answer the Public You notice how long some of these terms are? That's because 30% to 40% of search right now is being done with voice. And people search things very differently when they're asking Alexa versus when they're typing. They type very short, abbreviated queries. When they ask audibly, they ask in a really long, more detailed way. So you get to learn a lot more about what they're thinking. And then when you go over the alphabeticals, it'll show you all the terms, A, B, C, etc. So it really gets pretty doggone deep. You can learn a lot about them. And you start seeing this like on a map. The other place that I go to is Quora. Quora ranks questions by volume of the people who have read them, commented on them, etc. So in this particular thing, worm farming, the number one question is, do worm farms smell? And that turned out to be our number one biggest article on worm farming for homesteading.com. Do worm farms smell? Because people didn't want to put in a worm farm because they think it's going to sit in their spare bedroom and stink up the house. But who would have thought to look for that? Right? So no matter what you're talking about, you might be able to go to Quora and put in bookkeeping business, and you can see what all the questions are, and you can actually see the answers, and you can see the responses to people's answers. Whether they bought that answer or they didn't, right? Because they vote the answers up or down. What can be fed to worm farms? Can I put rice in my worm farm? Right? All these questions turned out to be great email subject lines, by the way, for the follow-up series. Because these were all things we knew in advance they wanted to know. They didn't even know they wanted to know them in a lot of cases, right? This will make you a smarter copywriter, a way better copywriter. Rule number 2, know your competitors. So the easiest way I know of to learn more about my competitors are to go to Amazon. It's just the greatest tool in the world.